trying to get Anita online, and I'm trying to make myself smaller so that you don't have to see too much of me. Yes. And so basically, while Anita joins in, I just want to talk a little bit about Amrita Shergill. So Amrita, for all roads in my life tend to lead to Amrita. I mean, when you talk about Indian art, everything seems to lead to Amrita. So if you're talking about, hi Aditya, you guys are welcome to join in at any time you want. And if you have any comments, please, love to hear them. Okay, back to what I was saying, which is that Amrita, and I think I heard, yes, there you are.
Hi, sorry.
This is perfect.
Okay, hi.
Hello, let me down a little bit. So I'm not covering Amrita, but I'm still there.
Yes,
okay,
but you're there.
I'm there. In the same frame as Amrita Shergill. I mean, to me, that's a really big deal, isn't it? Okay. So I was just introducing Amrita Shergill. So let me just say a couple of words on her, and then I will say a couple of words on Anita. Two extremely important women right now. So Amrita Shergill, as I said, she's like this web, and everything in my life from childhood seemed to fit inside this web. So if you're talking about Indian art, Amrita was the one who went to the Ajanta-Ellora caves and used those colors in her art and brought that into contemporary art. If you're talking about the Bengal school, it was Amrita who coupled the strands of the art she learned in Paris to Bengal art and brought them together with the subjects she's chosen, the colors, etc., while not being a part of Bengal art, which is very Mughal. If you're talking about miniature paintings, again, something which I love, it has to be Amrita who colors, Amrita and M. Hussain, but I mean, it's Amrita who's used those colors from miniatures and has taken the same faces from miniatures and brought it forward. The Pahari paintings, etc., that I love looking at, Amrita brought them to me. If you're talking about me as a Punjabi, well, there are two sides to it. One is, as a child, always being warned about, how Amrita was and how she passed away, and how, and that is a part of it as well. I mean, there's this constant warning which every Punjabi mother gives to her daughters about. And Amrita is the one that, well, I mean, I've got a glass with Frida on it also, who's the other famous woman artist in the world. But Amrita is the one who is always held up as a cautionary tale. Lahore. Amrita is the one who brings in people like Krishan Khanna, etc., because she was friends with all of them. Politics, Jawaharlal Nehru. There's always been this talk about whether Jawaharlal Nehru was just friends with Amrita or whether they were more than that. That's, if I live in Delhi, it's the National Gallery of Modern Art, where the National Gallery of Modern Art is set up around Amrita's paintings. And I'm going to discuss that a little later if Anita gives me a little chance. What else? What are the other strands? I mean, there's just so many strands. And of course, this year is Amrita's year. She's become the most expensive Indian artist in the world. I think she's the only woman artist in the top 10, but she is the most expensive Indian artist in the world. And that is fantastic. I'm just so thrilled about that. Okay, so that's Amrita for me. Now comes to Anita. Anita is, she's not only gorgeous, she's gorgeous in a very different way from Amrita, but she is extremely gorgeous. She's also the writer of this amazing book, which won the Bal Sahitya Puruskar in 2021. And it's really nice. I mean, she's managed to get all these photos, etc., from everywhere, including, I believe, from Amrita's nephew, Vivan Sundaram, who I think helped a lot with the writing of this book. And actually, the list of acknowledgements, I think, is about 1/3 of the book. So she's put together, it's like she's curated the whole of Amrita's work and brought it together in these pictures she's managed to bring together. So that's equally important as writing the story of Amrita. Anita, I got to ask, how did Amrita come into your life?
It's actually through a painting, right? There was this painting called Group of Three Girls. I think it's on page 99, if I'm not mistaken. It's probably one of the paintings that all of us have seen of Amrita. And there are these three young women who are so solemn and so substantial looking that it arrested my eye a long time ago. And the thing is, I've always noticed, because I had a young daughter growing up then, she's now a teenager and a person to herself. But she had lots of books on art, Western books on Western artists. And I always wanted to do Indian books on Indian artists, which were engaging, beautifully produced, and something which is a delight for the eye, as well as has layers and layers of information. So when I was offered the chance to write a book on a pioneering artist, I thought of Amrita solely because of that painting, which I loved of hers so much. And of course, as I began researching Amrita, the book took me about 4.5 to 5 years to complete. Partly also because I was doing all the visual research, all the permissions work, and ably helped by Tina Narang of HarperCollins. She was a huge support, but largely it was a lot of labor, which was, just endlessly time consuming, getting all the permissions and things like that. Vivan was a huge help. But the thing is that basically, while I was doing the book and researching it, like you said, Ritika, this web of art and history and geography. Like, I was amazed to learn that Amrita had lived through the Spanish flu. And, the book was released in 2018, but in 2020, we were living a pandemic just like Amrita was. And she was 5, she got it, she got the flu. And, even going into that rabbit hole of how many countries had what we always read of as a Spanish flu, because the Spanish government was the only one that had the guts to say that, yes, we have a flu epidemic going on. All other European governments said, nahi, kuch nahi ho raha hai. There's nothing like that. And even in India, we had so many lakhs that died because of that round of the 1925 round of the 25 or whichever year it was of the flu at that point. And interestingly, more people died of the flu than of the World War casualties, World War I, which was, I think, happening around the same time. So, this incredible web of information and the variety in Amrita's style itself opened up to me. And it was fascinating. Yeah, that's how I kind of fell into the book and Amrita's life.
Okay. So are we going to give a little bit of brief on Amrita? So do you want to start with the
Sure.
starting years?
Yeah. Sure. So Amrita lived for this 28 years, and very quickly to take you through it, she was born in 1913 to a mother who was Hungarian, father who was Sikh, and she was born in Budapest, and the family got stuck in Hungary in a sense because World War I began in 1914, like a year after she was born. And India and Britain were enemies. Britain, which was the imperial power over India, and Hungary were enemies. So nobody could come from one country to the other. And her family was kind of stuck in Europe. And, one of the things that this book opened up to me is how much geography and history and politics control our lives and our realities. So Amrita's father, who didn't like Europe that much, it was cold and, hard life and all of that, was stuck there kind of because of the war, because of this large geopolitical thing that was happening. And they came back to India shortly, and then they had like a nice colonial life, upper class life in Shimla. And then in between, her mother fell in love with an Italian sculptor who was working in the court of the Maharaja of Patiala, and went off with him to Florence, taking her 2 kids in tow. And they lived in Italy for about 6 months, came back to India, got thrown out. Amrita got thrown out of a school there for painting nude pictures. And then she came to a school here. She was put into, I think, a convent of Jesus and Mary in Shimla. and was caught writing a letter, anti-religious letter. She didn't like being forced to attend mass, and she was writing to her parents to complain, and like such letters invariably land in the wrong person's hands, and it landed in the headmistress's hands, and she was out of the school. Eventually, she was homeschooled. She loved it. Another interesting thing that happened in her life was that her mother's brother, her uncle, traveled from Hungary all the way to India on horseback to retrace the path of another Hungarian traveler from like 200 years ago, I think, and came to visit his sister's family. And he was from a very different school of art in Hungary called the Nagybanya School of Art, which was very oriented towards, looking at common people. Many of the painters and members of the school were manual laborers themselves. And Irvin Backey, that's the name of the uncle, he introduced Amrita to the world of sketching, live sketching. Because till then, like all good children, she was copying art, and now for the first time he made her notice the people who were working for the rich in Shimla. He made her draw them, he made her look at them. And after that came another hard decision in her father's life, because Irvin strongly recommended, it was very evident to everyone that this girl is passionately interested in art. And he kind of encouraged her parents to take her back to Europe and enroll her in an art school in Paris. And that was, again, a very hard decision. Sorry?
They didn't stay on in Paris.
No, they stayed on in Paris. That's what's amazing, that they took her there and stayed on, because, you don't leave a 16-year-old girl in Paris in an art school. It's perhaps must have been terrifying for them. And despite however unconventional they were as a family, they were always there as containers for her, like always there to hold their dreams, both the girls' dreams. So they went back to Paris when she was about 16, 15 and a half, 16, where she joined, in an interim way, she joined a smaller art school where she learned to draw nudes. She could see live nudes for the first time in her life, and she learned to draw that. And then she went into the very prestigious L'École des Beaux-Arts, the School of the National School of Fine Arts. She was the first Indian student to be enrolled there. And later on, I think the next person was Raza, the painter Raza, very soon after. And what was fascinating was one of the, again, rabbit holes I fell into was the discovery that Zohra Sehgal, the lovely actress in Hindi films, she was studying in England at around the same time, and she was in full parda while being in school and learning to act and learning, I don't know what else she was studying. But it's amazing to think of all these, historical figures who were like milling around Europe like students and doing all kinds of experimental stuff. Like Amrita loved wearing saris in Europe, in France, because it made her look like a little bit of a sensation. So yeah, it's fantastic. So that roughly, and then of course she came back to India, wanted to explore working here, because she loved the colors, and like Ritika said, she loved so much of the art that was already here, the miniature paintings, the mural art, Jamini Roy's work, all of it. She just loved so much of the color, and she always went where the art was. She went to Aurangabad when it was possible to see Prince of Ajanta and Ellora. She went all the way. She took like a bullock cart ride all the way to Mahabalipuram from Madras to see the incredible murals, relief sculptures. She went all the way to Matanshari Palace in Kerala, in Kochi, to see the tiny Dutch palace, which has about 45, if I'm not mistaken, I could be off here or there, beautiful murals in the Kerala mural style, paintings of the Ramayana around the king's bedchambers. And she was, distressed because it was all falling apart, and those murals have been only recently, in fact, renovated. But she always went where the art was, and India was full of art and full of colors and full of even the kind of fabrics she liked wearing. And she fought with her parents and finally convinced them to come back with her. And or that at least she needed to work here, and they came back with her, built her a studio in their house in Shimla. She became this young, Sorry?
It got hung for a minute. I was like, no, don't. This is just too fascinating. Don't go on. on me, okay?
No. So I don't know which part you missed, but yeah, she became this young enfant terrible of Indian art, as I was saying, and yeah, that's
Why?
roughly her life trajectory.
Why?
Yeah. Sorry.
Why infertility? Why was she known as this infertility?
So, couple of reasons. One was that she was trained in Paris. Now, it was such that people were extremely frank and brutally honest in sharing opinions on art. And one of the things that she did when she came here first was send her what she liked to call her new and good work, which was a more flat mural-like style of paintings to a fine arts exhibition, along with some of her old award-winning paintings, which were very much in the French academic realistic style. Now, the exhibition committee here took one look at the academic work and said, "This is wonderful," and gave her a prize, and sent back her new work. And she wrote them an indignant letter saying that, this is if you don't value me, I'll go and show at the Grand Salon where I have won a gold medal in Paris. So starting from there, she was, I think, brutally honest, and maybe brutal honesty doesn't sit well with Indian traditions and ways of behaving. And she was young. She was just about 23 or 24 years old. And yeah, like a lot of people have remarked on how she didn't necessarily do herself any market oriented favors by being that honest, but that was just who she was. She was honest, and she was honestly critical of her own work. Mind you, she's not being critical of others' work. She's saying that, you know, my old work looks good but is rubbish. My new work, you need to learn how to appreciate my new work because it's so good. So, she was hard on herself as well. So yeah, that pretty much many such incidents led to her being known as the enfant terrible of Indian art. But yeah, and of course, being a woman and
She's
having
basically
strong
100
opinions
years
never
ahead of her
goes
time.
well. Sorry, Ritika, your voice was a bit.
Yes, I said she was basically 100 years before her
I
time. I mean,
I
if she
think
is
so.
today
I
the
think so.
the
Yeah,
biggest selling
yeah,
artist,
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
and this was going back to 1935, 1936, if
Mm,
I
mm.
think,
Yes,
because she'd come
absolutely.
back to India by that time.
Yeah,
So
34,
yeah, so
34,
90
35.
years ahead of her time, and she
Yeah,
knew the
yeah.
value
Many
of that
years ahead.
art, which
Yeah, yeah. And I don't think that the festival committee took too kindly to being told that they needed to up their game.
good for them. I mean, they, you're looking at that work today, and it's exquisite. I mean, I agree
It
it's
is.
ahead of its time, or it's behind its time because she's working with Pahari miniatures and
Mm,
combining it with European, all the shading of Europe, etc.
yeah.
But I mean, it's phenomenal, that work of that period. I'm
Mm,
looking at it
yeah.
as, because I've been looking at it through the day to day.
Mm,
I mean, I don't think there's any artist anywhere in the world who was doing actual figurative art of this quality. I mean, I can look at the Monets, I can look at the Manets, I can look at the Vincent van Goghs, but who were approximately around the same time, if I'm not
no,
mistaken. Was
older, much
older.
older, much earlier,
Older.
much earlier. Yeah. And she
Okay.
was at a
So
cusp, she was at an interesting time, not only in art history, but also in her own life. Think of your work when you're 23 or 24. How much of it is going to be timeless. We all remember bad attempts from that age, but look at her work, it's all pretty much all good. And especially the painting that's showing on the screen right now, I love it so much because it's one of her later miniature inspired work where she starts using colors like white and red in this very strong blocking kind of way. It
yes,
arrests the eye, and it's very much like in the miniature tradition of using basic colors but having them very strongly on the artwork. And because her uncle had taught her this thing of never painting not from life, always drawing and painting from life. Uh, Interestingly, her father wrote for the Gadar magazine, the magazine of the Gadar party, and he was kind of seen as a seditionist by the British. and they realized that he was only a writer, not very harmful, not a terrorist in that sense. So they kind of said that, okay, he can come back to India, but he cannot have his access to his own money, so his own jagirs and stuff. Whereas her uncle had worked well with the British. He was a very big sugar mill owner in Gorakhpur. And these paintings, the later ones, when she wanted to draw elephants and camels, his estate in Gorakhpur had all these things. Plus, there's this photograph, lovely photograph, I think it's there in the book as well, where she gets, they've got elephants for her to paint. So,
Yes.
yeah.
This is also the time when she's when she goes to the shadi around there only, where the famous storyteller is painted, right?
Yes, yes.
The
It's an intense period.
yes.
From 35 to 38, 39 is an intense period of activity.
And I mean, you're looking at paintings like these, which are, I mean, I can spend days looking at it because no one else was looking into the women. You know, there is a certain difference between looking at women versus somebody who was empathetically feeling women, and you know, going into the Zanana area, painting the women who were in the Zanana area, and I don't think there's too much of that at all. I mean, obviously, you need to be a woman to be able to go in those areas, but equally, I don't think there's those. So, I mean, maybe because she's painted nudes, maybe she's fearless by this time. It couldn't have been easy. I mean, even today, for me to go into Punjab, to go into or in my case, to go into UP, which I know better, and where you're told that you can't even walk out of the house, you have to be driven out of the house. And she comes from that kind of family as well. I mean, she was royal. I mean, she was nobility. There's no two ways about that. I mean, to go out and make pictures in the village wasn't easy for her at all.
Yeah.
I mean,
also, the thing I like about her work at this time, when she looks at women, is that she says, I can see the boredom and the ennui in the women. So when she looks at the poor, she notices the fact that they have hard lives and they are fairly, defeated in how they look. And when she looks at the rich women, there is also sadness there. There is boredom. There is ennui, which is the French word for just miserable boredom. There is a lot of perhaps talent and energy in these women which has not got any outlet except being somebody's wife, somebody's mom, somebody's aunt, or being told not to do this or not to do that. So then she's able to capture. This one is a very powerful painting, the one that you have going on right now. And so I like the fact that she is looking intensely at both very poor women and at her own relatives who are very rich women, and able to see and hold the different states of misery in each of them.
But are there any happy pictures also? Because looking at them through one eye today, I can't see anything happy. I mean, okay, until you get simply animal pictures, which are okay. You don't put an emotion into an animal.
Well, that was one of the things she was accused of by her contemporaries and critics at the time as well, that you're always painting India as this place of misery, and but then on the other hand, you have beautiful, delectable looking Sumer, which is the one on the screen right now, who she was able to draw. Now, the other thing that is interesting about Amrita is that, and which is what I wanted to bring out in the book, is that while she was painting in this flat mural way, she was also doing commissioned work, which was French academic style of hyper-realistic looking, almost like the painting of Sumer that you just showed, that was flashed by the young lady in the green sari, her cousin. She was doing commissions, she was doing paid work, and she always said that this is my bad art, and my bad art sells well, and my good art, which doesn't sell so well, I make it for myself. And it's amazing how she's looking at women in certain paintings, and how in other ways, in other paintings, she's looking at women in a different way altogether.
Even this one, I mean, if I didn't know this was a friend of hers, I would think that she's a
Yeah.
patient of consumption or something. She's really not very happy in life. Okay, so now do you divide up this period to her marriage and moving to Lahore? How do you divide the next period of her life, which is basically the last part of her life?
Yeah. So there was this period where she started feeling, of course, like all of us, I would say, let's stop saying artists or painters had it. All of us have terrible low moments in lives, right? And when we feel blocked and we can't do anything, she was going through one like that. Her younger sister was getting married to an IAS officer, Vivan's father, Indira Shergill was marrying Kalyan Sundaram. And I think somewhere there was a little bit of envy. There was this old, consistent sort of love affair with her cousin, her first cousin. And she wanted to make that firm. And she took a ship to Hungary, got married to Victor there, wrote to her friend Karl Khandalawala, who was the museum director of the museum in Bombay. She wrote to him saying that I will never stay back in Europe. Don't worry, I'm coming back because I can't paint in Europe. I can only paint in India. Of course, she went there and painted some beautiful pictures, beautiful,
Themes, for
lovely
example.
stuff. Yeah. And then she came back, and when she came back is when I think she hit upon a very sad patch, because again, the plan was that she and Victor would go and stay in Shimla at her parents' place. She would paint and he would open a practice as a doctor. And her mother was horrified that she had married her sister's son, who was just a doctor. Being a doctor was not a prestigious profession. It was not a profession that ensured you money. It was a profession that just that made sure that you would be dirt poor for a long part of your life and you would be serving the community. You would not earn much. And she was so upset with this marriage that she made it very uncomfortable for them to live in her house, and they moved to Gorakhpur, where to her uncle's home. He generously said, come and live in our house, because his house was huge. And while it was awesome that she had this opportunity to be within the womb of the family, you know how it is to be within the womb of the family. Right? There is a point when you want your own space. And eventually, after many trips to Lahore, she managed to convince Victor to move there. And that's when he moved there. And they moved together because a lot of doctors had left for the war effort. World War II was already there. And so there were, doctors' commissions opened up, and he went. And in fact, the house they lived in, Gangaram Mansion or something, is still there in Lahore, if I'm not mistaken. And they stayed there. She had a little house, and then they had a basti, Barsati like thing, sorry, not basti, Barsati like thing upstairs, where she was painting. She began painting someone's cowshed, which she could see from her window. And that's when, unfortunately, she passes away.
And so approximately how many paintings in her life? Because I know in her Paris section you've written that she's done about 60.
So roughly 175 is the last count that someone's hazarded. And interestingly, I think in 2015, they found a new painting done by her in 1935 or 31, sorry, a self-portrait. And there was like this big, shuffle in the art world because interestingly, Amrita Shergill is one of the 9 national treasures of artists, among artists named and framed in 78, I think 1978. And these national treasures, their work, if it is in India, cannot be taken out of the country. It can be taken out, it can be exhibited and brought back, but it cannot be taken away to another place. So when that painting in 1931, I think 1931 painting was found in 2015 in Europe, the art world was thrilled because here was a painting that they could actually buy and sell in the open international market.
And where is it now? Did it actually sell out there? Because I don't.
I think it has sold, and I don't know exactly where
What
it
is
is.
it sold for?
Yeah,
Because
and when I hear all these crazy prices that Amrita's paintings are selling at now, I feel bittersweet because, of course, fantastic, good that her brand is so huge. But I also remember this letter where she'd written to a customer, a young woman who wanted to buy her work, and said, look, I cannot sell it to you for 650 rupees. I need to be paid at least 1,000 rupees for this painting. And let's assume 1,000 rupees was worth, say, 50,000 in those days. But still, that she's haggling for such small sums. And now look at the fabulous, I mean, it seems almost meaningless, doesn't it, these prices?
I mean, yeah, it does. I mean, somebody's got that kind of money and
Yeah,
it's going above. And this one,
right.
which is sold for 61 crores, I think it's sold for. Like, I want to see that drawing room where this painting is going up.
Yeah, don't you wish?
But this is from Karl Khandalwala's collection. The storyteller.
Which one?
The reason why
I
because you got
don't
it in the
remember
book.
which collection it's from. It'll be there in the book, yeah.
It's there in the book. And that's why I was like,
Yeah.
oh, it's Karl Khandalwala's the collection. Okay, take it. And can I now talk about the National Museum? So, I mean, obviously,
yeah, sure.
So this is a part of the story which I know well, and this is the reason for the National Museum being set up, which is that after Amrita Shergill passed away, her family gave a certain amount of photos, I think 72 paintings or something,
Yeah.
to they offered it to the Indian government and said, this is whatever. And then her husband gave another 25 or something, making it up to 102 paintings,
correct,
which were donated to the Indian government.
Yeah.
And at that time, there was no National Gallery of Modern Art, but almost exactly at that time, two brothers came to Jawaharlal Nehru and said, they want to set up a museum of modern art. And Nehru put these two things together and opened the National Gallery of Modern Art. And I think this is 58, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be completely mistaken in the year. But therefore, the National Gallery of Modern Art is set up around Amrita's works.
That must have been the first strong collection. Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
And today, until the museum was closed down for renovation, that is till September or so, Amrita was the only woman artist displayed in the National Museum of Modern Art. And that's shocking. And it also says a lot about, it says a lot about the way we treat artists in this country. I mean, we've had no shortage of women artists, but
fantastic,
we don't even count
women artists. Yeah.
So, I mean, for Amrita to constantly keep that status, she seems blessed in a way. She could have been forgotten so easily, but she's never been forgotten. And why do you think she's never been forgotten?
I think she was probably never forgotten because she wasn't of her age. In a strange way, I kept feeling while writing the book that this is somebody who would have fit into our culture so beautifully. She feels like almost like this, global sort of #wanderlust kind of person where she's going everywhere, she's seeing everything. Plus, she's, she was one of India's first professional women painters. So there were many women painters before her, right? But she was someone who was making a living out of doing her art. She was actually, like, she did a tour of the South. She ended up pissing off the Nawab of Hyderabad, Nizam of Hyderabad, I think. And he didn't buy as many paintings from her as she had imagined he would, and that as he had indicated he would. But as she wrote to her sister, I have sold enough paintings to meet my travel expenses. So I think what makes her, in a sense, unforgettable is the fact that she was this global citizen. She was a professional. She was doing this as a way of making a living as well, and yes, of course, she loved looking lovely. She loved dressing up in beautiful saris, silk saris, and wearing big earrings. And, she was embarrassed by her facial hair and tried to have it electrolyzed. So she's very human in that sense, in a way that perhaps we don't know maybe as many of our older artists as well as we know her in a certain sense. There's something very electric about her personality. In her photographs, she almost seems to be alive and talking to you, about to talk to you. So maybe those things are all part of the reason why she's unforgettable even now.
And what were the kids' reactions to this book? I mean, your daughter, people
And
around
her
you,
friends.
what were kids?
So one of the things, they just a couple of sessions sitting with them and looking at her paintings gave me the idea for how I need to talk about this book, how I need to talk about craft in this book. So typically children are told that she was painting in a mural-like manner. There's a lot of jargon. I said no jargon. There will only be showing. There won't be much telling in terms of art history terms. Okay, they don't need to read those. They can see the change in her work. And one of the things they said to me was that, look how beautifully she's drawing in the older paintings, where she's in the painting in the realistic academic style. She's drawing so nicely there. Why does, like this one, Boris Tazlitsky's painting, and why does she start drawing so badly later? And absolutely childlike honesty when you understand that, okay, they are reporting fact, right? Like, here is something which could pass off as a photograph, and there is something that looks like it's drawn on a wall. Why? So, somewhere along the way, that gave me a sense of the format. Like, I wanted the paintings to flow with her story. If she did something in 1934, the painting should come there. So that, in a sense, kids get a sense of, this is how her story was progressing, this is how her mind was working, and look, this is how her art was changing. And leave that question to them. And I've also said in the book that there may be paintings you like and there may be paintings you don't like. That's fine, because everybody is free to like what they want and not like what they don't want. So, that's the whole point of it, that it gave me, in a sense, these visions of like how to try and talk to kids about art.
And I'm just going to mention for one second, because it's important, because Vivan ended up writing an entire book about it, the Umrao Shergill case. So Amrita literally came from a bonkers family, right? I mean, her mother was known to be a depressive. Her father, if Amrita's own nephew is to be believed, looked at his children with a less than fatherly eye, although she loved him very much. But it couldn't have, I mean, you kind of worry about if she had lived for longer, what would have developed with her. I mean, on one side, there's this amazing art. On one side, there's the more we talk, there's no doubt that there is a troubled family behind her. I mean, and I'd always thought she got along really well with Indra, but you're saying that there was...
No, they had a couple very strong fights, and Amrita was clearly the golden child of the family. So I also wonder at times, what was Indra thinking at these moments, that, we go everywhere for Amrita, we move countries for Amrita's art, and where did that leave that little girl also? And it's not every child who's taken away to another country because the mother is having a brief love affair with somebody from that country, right? Like, as it happened with Amrita and her sister. So clearly, it's not like a perfect 2.5 kids and a picket fence kind of a family, but it was a strongly loving family, and loving families tend to be a bit nuts. Like, not every family gets up and takes their child to Paris to study art. Maybe there's a little bit of insanity which supports that vision as well. There's a certain, okay, let's try this out and see what happens, kind of, that sort of energy to the whole family. So I think, as with every person, her family was a mixed blessing. There's no two ways. I mean, her mother killed herself 8 years after Amrita died. That's the only fact that I didn't put into the book, because I felt it was too heartbreaking, and it was 8 years after her passing away, so it didn't matter. But her mother was very upset when Amrita died. She tried to get Victor arrested, because she felt it was his negligence, and it probably was his negligence, or his lack of understanding of tropical diseases, because he was a doctor trained in the temperate cold zones. So, it was a disturbed, volatile, extremely artistic family, and that comes with its share of blessings and curses.
Yeah, because I was listening to somebody reading out poems in how somebody from Hungary, how they reacted to Amrita's works. And there was this amazing program at the IIC the other day. And they talked about how Amrita would write to Victor, etc., saying that Antoinette would land up at a restaurant where they were sitting and start screaming at her, and she'd have to get up and walk away, and it would affect her.
Mm,
So
obviously.
there was.
I mean, part of the support was that we will take care of you and we will make sure that you are a rounded personality and a beautiful, attractive woman, but you must marry well. And kind of, yeah, no, it was, I think it was more Marie Antoinette than the father, because she had, in a sense, thought she was marrying well, and then the man turned out to be a writer who pissed off the government and was not getting much money. So, she probably didn't want the same life for her daughters, very aggressively so. And her hope was that these girls would marry well and perhaps take care of her as well. And the fact that she was marrying Victor meant that now it's going to be the other way around. We are going to have to support you and your husband. So yeah, it could not have been a very sweet and nice family, and perhaps part of the reason why she had such a weakened constitution and why she died of dysentery, which was of course a dangerous illness in those days if treated badly. Part of it is probably just the amount of emotional stress that various factors were giving her.
Yeah. Now that we have nicely psychoanalyzed Amrita as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. I can't think of any other questions which I want to ask. It's been fabulous. I mean, you've really, really gone into her depths. Now,
thank you, Ritika.
You want to
no
mention?
I mean, I can go on for another hour, but if anyone in the live has any questions, please feel free to ask us. Please feel free to type it in. But yeah, I think we need to tell more stories. We need to tell complicated stories. That is one of the things we discussed, right? Like a lot of my daughter's friends, mothers would say, "Why are you telling this artist story? Can't you tell a happier story?" And I think it's important to tell complicated stories as well. To kids with respect for the child's intelligence, not assuming anything. And you have to, of course, be very careful how you write it. But I think it's important to tell stories, important to tell complicated stories as well.
Yeah. And tell them, I mean, warts and all, not just one side of the personality.
Yeah.
In fact,
Absolutely.
I go as far as to say that if anyone wants to join us on this Insta Live, I'll be happy to add you in, because the folks whose names I've seen are all in the art world and know what the hell we're talking about. So if anyone would like to join in, if anyone would like to comment, if anyone would like to ask questions, Anita and I could continue talking for another hour on this, because each one of those paintings is exquisite. Like, you can see her develop. You can see an almost Picasso-like development where he went in one direction and she's
finding her direction still. Finding her direction.
Finding her direction, yes. But I mean, like Picasso, who also started out as a child prodigy, was, by the time he was 12 to 16, he was making the same kind of perfect art, and then moved. But who the world was affected in a lot of ways. She managed to escape that, at least. I mean, her husband then went, right after her death, he went to join the prisoner of war camp, right? He was sent to the prisoner of war.
He was in India. Yeah.
So as long as she was around, so that must have been another thing that must be in her mind.
Yes. And in fact, speaking of war and all these kind of themes, there's one young man whose painting appears twice in your slideshow, and that was Boris. When it comes next, I'll point it out. But it's Boris Tazlitsky. Boris was somebody, again, at 17 or 16, they had a brief love affair. And they often modeled for each other as friends, they sat for each other. So there are about 3 paintings of Boris which are very beautiful, very sexy and sensual in a certain way. And Boris himself was, I think, a French Jew, if I'm not mistaken. He lived in France later on. But his mother, who Amrita also painted, died in a concentration camp, in fact. And later on, Boris was famous because he was taken into a concentration camp and he smuggled pieces of paper to draw this beautiful, the experiences of the horrors of the camp, and all the kind of disturbing things that he was seeing. Prison guards smuggled him paper. Often he traded things for paper, and he managed to draw about 100 sketches from Buchenwald, I think it's called, the exhibition and the catalog. So, the web of world art history around Amrita is staggering, because on the one hand she's bemoaning the state of the Mutton Cherry Palace murals in Kerala. On the other hand, she's sneaking off to see the amazing Jewish collections of paintings in Hungary just before they are taken away by the Nazis. The scope of her life, and the kind of things she's seen and done. Ritika, I think your video is stalled again.
Yes, I think it is. And I
Yeah.
think it's now acting weird. So I am going to say thank you and good night.
Thank you so much, Ritika, for having me.
Love you.
And
Thank
thank
you
you
so
everyone
much.
who joined.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Okay, you go off.